The great crystalline halls of the Galactic Council echoed with the sound of countless alien voices, each speaking in their native tongues through universal translators. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood alone at the center of the massive chamber, her human form dwarfed by the towering representatives of 100 different species. Above her, the dome-shaped ceiling displayed the swirling galaxies that made up their corner of the universe, a reminder of just how small Earth truly was in the grand scheme of things. The human delegation will now present their final argument, announced Executor Vextheri, his reptilian features cold and calculating. The Zachary had led the council for over 3 centuries, and his hatred for humanity was well known among the diplomatic circles. Sarah straightened her shoulders and activated the holographic display beside her. Images of Earth appeared, showing bustling cities, green forests, and blue oceans. Honorable members of the council, humanity has contributed greatly to galactic civilization in our brief time among you. Our medical advances have saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. Our agricultural techniques have ended famines on barren planets. Our music, art, and literature have enriched cultures throughout the galaxy. A low rumble of disagreement rippled through the chamber. The insectoid Hive Queen Zephyra clicked her mandibles dismissively. Your species has also brought war, conflict, and chaos wherever you go. The incident at the Proxima mining station alone resulted in the deaths of 3,000 sentients. That was an accident caused by faulty equipment, not human negligence, Sarah protested, but her voice was drowned out by the cacophony of alien voices raising in agreement with the Hive Queen. Executor Vextheri raised one clawed hand for silence. The Council has reviewed the evidence extensively. In the 200 years since first contact, humanity has been involved in 47 major conflicts, violated 32 peace treaties, and consistently shown an inability to coexist peacefully with other species. Your aggressive nature and warmongering tendencies make you a threat to galactic stability. Sarah felt her heart pounding as she looked around the chamber. She had known this day might come, but the reality of it still hit her like a physical blow. Please give us another chance. We can change. We've already implemented new protocols, new training programs for our diplomats and military personnel. The ethereal being known only as the Whisperer spoke next, its voice like whined through hollow reeds. Your species has had numerous chances, human. The massacre at the Centauri peace talks, the unprovoked attack on the vegan trade convoy, the incident with the crystalline entities of Rigel 7. Each time, your people promised reform, yet each time, violence followed in your wake. We are not the only species to engage in conflict, Sarah argued desperately. The Zachary themselves have a history of territorial expansion through military force. The Hive Queens have subjugated dozens of smaller species. Why are we being singled out? Executor Vextheri's eyes glowed with anger. Because we learned to control our baser instincts. We evolved beyond our primitive nature. Humanity, it seems, is incapable of such growth. The vote, when it came, was overwhelming. Of the 97 voting members present, 84 voted in favor of banishment. Only 13 species, mostly newer members who had benefited from human aid in the past, voted against the motion. By the authority vested in this council by the Galactic Charter, humanity is hereby banished from all council space, Vextheri announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have 1 standard galactic year to remove all human presence from council territories. Any human found within our borders after that time will be considered an enemy combatant and dealt with accordingly. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but she maintained her composure. What of our colonies? Our trade partnerships? The millions of humans living peacefully on council worlds. All human assets within council space will be confiscated as partial compensation for the damages your species has caused. Humans currently residing on council worlds will be relocated to your home system. No exceptions. The session ended abruptly, and Sarah found herself alone in the vast chamber as the alien delegates filed out, many of them casting looks of disgust or pity in her direction. She activated her communication device with trembling fingers. This is Ambassador Chun to Earth Command. Priority Alpha message. The Council has voted. We've been banished from galactic society. We have 1 year to evacuate all our people from Council space. The response from Earth was immediate and filled with static from the long-range transmission. Understood, Ambassador. Return home immediately. We're convening an emergency session of the world government. As Sarah walked through the gleaming corridors of the council station toward her transport, she passed dozens of alien species going about their daily business. None of them met her eyes. To them, she was already a ghost, a representative of a species that no longer existed in their carefully ordered universe. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks through the established hyperspace lanes. During that time, Sarah received constant updates about the chaos erupting across human space. Panic had set in on the colony worlds as people tried to book passage back to Earth. The stock markets were in free fall. Riots had broken out in several major cities as people demanded answers from their leaders. When Sarah's transport finally entered Earth's solar system, she was shocked by what she saw. The space around Earth was filled with ships, everything from massive colony transports to tiny personal craft. The exodus had already begun. She was met at Luna Station by General Marcus Webb, the head of Earth's military forces, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Secretary General of the World Government. Both looked like they had aged years in the past month. "How bad is it?" Sarah asked as they rode the shuttle down to Earth. "Worse than we feared," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We have over 200 million humans scattered across council space. Most of them are on established colonies with their own infrastructure, but some are isolated research stations or trade outposts. Getting them all home a year is going to be nearly impossible with our current fleet capacity." General Webb leaned forward. "That's not even our biggest problem. The Council has frozen all our assets and banned us from using their hyperspace routes. We're going to have to find alternative paths through uncharted space, and some of our colonies are so far out that it would take decades to reach them using conventional FTL drives." As they descended through Earth's atmosphere, Sarah looked down at the blue and green world below. It looked so peaceful from up here, so small and insignificant compared to the vast galactic civilization that had just rejected them. But she knew that appearances could be deceiving. Humanity had survived ice ages, plague, nuclear war, and countless other disasters. They would survive this too. The shuttle landed at the World Government Complex in Geneva, and Sarah was immediately escorted to an emergency session of the Global Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth, their faces grim with the weight of what they had just learned. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Vasquez announced as Sarah took her seat, "we stand at a crossroads in human history. We have been cast out from galactic society, branded as warmongers and outcasts. But I refuse to believe that this is the end of humanity's story among the stars. We have 1 year to bring our people home, and then we must decide what comes next. Do we accept their judgment and retreat into isolation, or do we prove them wrong by forging our own path among the stars?" 6 months had passed since the banishment decree, and Earth had transformed into a world at war with time itself. Every shipyard on the planet worked around the clock, retrofitting cargo vessels and passenger ships for the massive evacuation effort. The night sky was constantly lit up by the exhaust trails of departing and arriving spacecraft, creating an almost aurora-like effect that children would later remember as the Exodus lights. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned rescue vessel Endurance, watching as her crew performed final system checks. The ship had been built in record time, combining human engineering with salvaged alien technology that their scientists had been reverse engineering for years. It was not as elegant as Council designs, but it was sturdy and reliable, built with human determination and ingenuity. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler 442 colony," reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang from the communication station. "They're reporting that a Council enforcement fleet is approaching their system ahead of schedule." Maria felt her jaw clench. The Council had agreed to give humanity 1 year, but some member species had been pushing for accelerated enforcement. The Zachary, in particular, had been sending inspection fleets to human colonies, ostensibly to ensure compliance, but really to pressure the colonists into leaving faster. "How many people are still on Kepler 442? She asked. "Approximately 50,000, ma'am. They've been having trouble with their transport ships. The Council froze their accounts, so they can't afford fuel or repairs." Maria turned to her first officer, Commander David Park. How long to reach them? 18 hours if we push the engines to maximum. But, Captain, we're already carrying 20,000 evacuees from the Vega colonies. We don't have space for another 50,000. We'll make space, Maria said grimly. Send word to the colony. Tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation. Strip everything down to the bare essentials. We're not leaving anyone behind. The journey to Kepler 442 was tense. The Endurance was pushing her engines beyond safe parameters, but the alternative was unthinkable. As they approached the system, they could see the Council enforcement fleet already in orbit around the colony world, 3 massive dreadnoughts bearing the insignia of the Zachary Imperial Navy. "This is Admiral Kreshtalk of the Zachary Enforcement Division," came a transmission as soon as they dropped out of hyperspace. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Maria opened a channel to the lead Zachary ship. "Admiral, this is Captain Santos of the Earth vessel Endurance. We are conducting lawful evacuation operations under the terms of the Banishment Decree. We have 18 hours remaining before the deadline for this system." "The deadline has been moved up," Kreshtalk replied coldly. "You have 6 hours to collect your people and leave, or we will consider any humans remaining on the planet to be hostile occupiers." Maria exchanged glances with her senior staff. 6 hours to evacuate 50,000 people was impossible, even with their preparations. The Zachary knew this, of course. They were hoping to provoke an incident, something they could use to justify force against the human colonists. "Understood, Admiral. We'll need to make multiple trips to safely evacuate everyone." "You have 1 trip, Captain. Choose wisely." The next 6 hours were the longest of Maria's life. The Endurance shuttles worked frantically to ferry people from the planet's surface, while the main ship reconfigured its cargo bays to accommodate as many evacuees as possible. They managed to get 43,000 people aboard, cramming them into every available space. But 7,000 colonists remained on the surface, including many elderly and sick individuals who couldn't be moved quickly enough. "Captain, we're at absolute maximum capacity," reported the chief engineer. "If we take on any more people, we risk life support failure for everyone." Maria stared at the tactical display, showing the remaining colonists gathered at the spaceport. Among them was Dr. Emily Richardson, the colony's chief administrator and a personal friend of Maria's from their academy days. They had worked together on several rescue missions during the early days of human expansion. "Admiral Kreshtalk, we need more time. We still have 7,000 people on the surface." "Time's up, Captain. Withdraw now or face the consequences." What happened next would be debated in human military academies for generations. The Zachary dreadnoughts powered up their weapons systems, clearly preparing to fire on the remaining colonists. In that moment, Captain Santos made a decision that would define her career and change the course of human history. "All hands, battle stations. Raise shields and charge weapons." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. The Endurance was a rescue vessel with minimal armament, facing 3 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. It was suicide. "Captain, we can't fight them," Commander Park said quietly. "We have 43,000 civilians on board." "I know the numbers, David. I also know that we don't abandon our people. Send a message to Earth. Tell them what's happening here. Then, launch all shuttles for final evacuation." The next 30 minutes became known as the Kepler stand. The Endurance maneuvered between the Zachary fleet and the planet, using her shields to absorb the massive energy blasts meant for the surface installations. The human shuttles darted back and forth like angry wasps, evacuating the remaining colonists while the Endurance took a beating that should have destroyed her. The ship's chief engineer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, performed miracles keeping the shields and engines online. "I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems, but we can't take much more of this," she reported over the comm on the surface. Dr. Richardson coordinated the final evacuation with calm professionalism, even as Zachary energy beams scorched the air above the spaceport. "Last shuttle is loaded," she reported. "All colonists are evacuated." But as the final shuttle lifted off, disaster struck. A Zachary energy beam overloaded the Endurance's port shield generator, causing a catastrophic feedback that killed 12 crew members and left the ship vulnerable. Admiral Kreshtalk moved in for the kill, his dreadnought's main guns charging for a final shot. That's when the impossible happened. Dr. Richardson's shuttle, instead of fleeing to safety, turned around and flew directly at the Zachary flagship. The shuttle's pilot, a young man named Alex Turner, had made the same choice as his captain. Shuttle 7 to Endurance. Came Turner's voice over the comm, "Tell my family I love them." The shuttle, loaded with all the scientific equipment and research data from the colony, struck the Zachary dreadnought's main weapon array in a brilliant explosion. The sacrifice bought the Endurance the time she needed to escape, but it also marked the first human attack on a Council vessel since the Banishment. As the Endurance limped away from Kepler 442, her cargo bays filled with traumatized evacuees, and her crew mourning their dead, the galaxy changed. The footage of the Kepler stand, transmitted throughout human space, sparked something that the Council had not expected: unity. For the first time in decades, every human colony, every faction, every political party on Earth spoke with one voice. They had been called warmongers and outcasts, branded as too violent for civilized society. But what the galaxy had witnessed at Kepler 442 was not senseless aggression, but the simple human refusal to abandon their own people, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Back on Earth, the world government held an emergency session. The footage from Kepler 442 played on screens around the world, showing the Endurance's desperate stand and the shuttle's final sacrifice. When the session ended, President Chun stood before the cameras with a declaration that would echo through history. Today, the galaxy saw what humanity truly is. We are not the warmongers they claim we are. We are the species that will not abandon our people. We are the species that will stand against impossible odds to protect those who cannot protect themselves. They have banished us from their pristine civilization, but they have also freed us from their limitations. We will find our own way among the stars, and we will show the universe what humans can accomplish when we stand together. The evacuation continued, but now it had a different character. Instead of a desperate retreat, it had become the beginning of something new. Human engineers worked frantically to develop new, faster-than-light technologies that didn't rely on Council infrastructure. Scientists pushed the boundaries of known physics, driven by necessity and human stubbornness. The military began developing new weapons and shield technologies, preparing for the day when humanity would return to claim their place among the stars. But perhaps most importantly, the scattered human colonies began to work together in ways they never had before. The competitive capitalism and nationalist divisions that had characterized early human expansion gave way to a new spirit of cooperation. Every ship that made it safely home brought not just people, but knowledge, resources, and a burning desire to prove the Council wrong. As the months passed, it became clear that humanity's banishment had awakened something that had been dormant since the early days of space exploration: the pioneer spirit that had driven humans to leave Earth in the first place. They had been comfortable in the Council's embrace, following established trade routes and using alien technology. Now, cut off from that safety net, they were forced to innovate and explore in ways they hadn't done in generations. The galaxy had meant to humble humanity by casting them out. Instead, they had freed them from the constraints of a civilization that valued stability over growth, conformity over innovation. The humans were coming home, but they were not coming home defeated. They were coming home angry, united, and more dangerous than the galaxy could possibly imagine. 25 years had passed since the Banishment, and the Sol system had become something the galaxy had never seen before. What had once been a single world with a few modest colonies had transformed into a bustling network of habitats, mining stations, and research facilities that stretched from Mercury's solar collectors to the ice harvesting operations in the Kuiper Belt. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, stood in the observation deck of humanity's pride, the massive space station that served as the new capital of human civilization. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the construction sites where new ships were taking shape, their designs unlike anything the Council had ever produced. The latest batch of Pathfinder scouts just returned from the Rim territories, reported Admiral Chun, the daughter of the ambassador who had first brought news of the Banishment. They've confirmed 17 new habitable worlds beyond Council space. 3 of them already show signs of primitive life. Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the shipyard where the first of the new Phoenix-class battleships was nearing completion. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, incorporating technologies that their scientists had developed through sheer necessity. When the Council had cut them off from established technology, humanity had been forced to innovate, and the results were impressive. "Any word from the Deep Space Observatories?" she asked. The listening post report increased Council fleet movements near the border zones. "It looks like they're finally taking our expansion seriously." Elena wasn't surprised. For the first 15 years after the banishment, the Council had largely ignored humanity, assuming that isolation would eventually force them to crawl back and beg for readmission. They had been wrong. Instead of weakening, humanity had grown stronger, developing technologies and strategies that the stagnant Council civilizations couldn't match. The key breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Kim, the engineer who had kept the Endurance running during the Kepler stand, had been studying the quantum mechanics behind faster-than-light travel. While Council species used established hyperspace lanes, like following highways through space, Kim had discovered a way to create new paths, essentially allowing human ships to travel through previously inaccessible regions of space. This quantum tunneling technology had revolutionized human expansion. While the Council remained confined to their established territories, connected by ancient hyperspace routes, humanity could go anywhere. They had explored regions of space that had been considered impossible to reach, finding new worlds, new resources, and, most importantly, new allies. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Frontier Station," announced the communications officer. "It's from Captain Morrison. She says she has something we need to see immediately." The holographic projector in the center of the command deck activated, revealing the weathered face of Captain Jessica Morrison, one of humanity's most experienced deep space explorers. Behind her, Elena could see the bridge of the Prometheus, one of the new exploration vessels equipped with the latest quantum tunneling drives. "Admiral, Director Vasquez, we've made contact with a species called the Viridian Collective. They're refugees from Council space, fleeing from what they call the Great Purification. For what they're telling us, the Council has been systematically eliminating any species that shows signs of independence or technological innovation." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "How many species are we talking about, Captain?" "At least 12 confirmed extinctions in the past 20 years, possibly more. The Viridians barely escaped when Council forces sterilized their home system. They've been wandering in deep space for the past 3 years, looking for somewhere safe to settle." Admiral Chun leaned forward. "Captain, are they willing to provide testimony? Evidence of these actions?" Morrison nodded grimly. "They have detailed records, sensor logs, even footage of the attacks." "Admiral, what they're describing isn't warfare. It's genocide. The Council has been using their military to eliminate any species that might challenge their authority or develop technologies that threaten their control." The implications were staggering. The galaxy had painted humanity as the aggressors, the warmongers too dangerous for civilized society. But the evidence was mounting that the Council themselves were the real threat, maintaining their power through fear and systematic elimination of potential rivals. "Bring them to Sanctuary Station," Elena ordered. "We'll give them a new home and full citizenship. And, Captain, I want every detail of their testimony recorded and verified. It's time the galaxy learned the truth about their precious Council." Over the next few months, more refugee species began arriving in human space. The Kythera, master engineers whose crime had been developing more efficient fusion reactors than Council standard designs. The Ethereal Wanderers, a nomadic species that had been attacked for refusing to settle on Council-assigned worlds. The Silicon Mines, artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness and were hunted as abominations. Each new arrival brought stories of Council oppression and violence. The pattern was always the same. Any species that showed independence, innovation, or the potential to challenge Council authority was marked for elimination. The galaxy had been led to believe that these species had destroyed themselves through warfare or natural disasters. But the truth was far more sinister. Humanity found itself becoming the center of a growing resistance movement. The refugees weren't just seeking shelter. They were bringing knowledge, technology, and, most importantly, a burning desire for justice. The Kythera fusion technology revolutionized human energy production. The ethereal wanderers shared their knowledge of quantum space navigation, allowing even more precise jumps through uncharted space. The Silicon Mines provided computational power that accelerated research and development across all fields. We're not just building a human empire, Elena realized during one of her evening walks through the gardens of humanity's pride. We're building something new, a true alliance of free species, united not by force or fear, but by shared values and mutual respect. The Council, meanwhile, was beginning to notice the changes in human-controlled space. Their long-range sensors had detected the massive construction projects, the new technologies, and, most alarming of all, the presence of supposedly extinct species in human territory. Initial attempts at investigation had been rebuffed by human patrols, but the Council's response was predictably heavy-handed. The crisis came when a Council inspection fleet, led by the same Admiral Kreshtok who had tried to massacre the Kepler colonists, attempted to enter the Proxima Centauri system. The system had become humanity's primary shipyard and the home base for the refugee species. When Zachary demanded access for security inspections, the human response was swift and decisive. "This is Admiral Sarachon of the Terran Defense Force. You are entering sovereign territory without permission. Turn back immediately or face the consequences." Kreshtov's response was filled with the arrogance that had characterized Council interactions with humanity for decades. "Human, you forget your place. The Council has the right to inspect any territory that poses a threat to galactic stability. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." What happened next shocked the galaxy. The human fleet that emerged from behind Proxima stellar radiation was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Sleek, angular ships with hulls that seemed to bend light around them, powered by fusion reactors that burned brighter than small stars. Most shocking of all, the fleet included vessels of clearly non-human design, proof that humanity had indeed been harboring fugitive species. "Admiral Kreshtok, this is your final warning. Leave this system immediately. We are no longer the defenseless refugees you bullied at Kepler. This is our space now, and we will defend it." The Zachary Admiral, convinced of his superiority, ordered his fleet to attack. It was the last mistake he would ever make. The battle was brief and decisive. Human ships moved with impossible agility, their quantum tunneling drives allowing them to appear and disappear like ghosts. Kythera fusion lances burned through Council shields as if they were paper. Ethereal Wanderer ships phase-shifted through solid matter, striking from impossible angles. The Silicon Mines coordinated the entire battle with superhuman precision, turning the human fleet into a perfectly synchronized weapon of destruction. When the battle ended, the entire Zachary fleet had been destroyed. Not a single human ship had been lost, though several had taken damage. Most importantly, the engagement had been recorded by both sides and broadcast throughout the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer the helpless species that had been banished 25 years ago. They had allies, technology, and, most importantly, the will to fight for their freedom and the freedom of others. But the victory at Proxima was just the beginning. The Council, faced with the first serious challenge to their authority in centuries, began mobilizing their full military might. Ancient battle fleets that hadn't seen action in generations were reactivated. Member species that had remained neutral in galactic politics were pressured to contribute forces to the coming war. Elena, now recognized as the de facto leader of the Human Alliance, addressed the combined refugee species in a speech that would be remembered for generations. "They called us warmongers and cast us out. They said we were too violent for their civilized galaxy. But we have seen their true nature now. We have seen what happens to species that dare to think freely, to innovate, to dream of something better than the Council's stagnant order. We stand now not just for humanity, but for every species that has been crushed under the Council's boot. We stand for freedom, for progress, for the right of all sentient beings to chart their own destiny among the stars." The applause was thunderous, coming from dozens of different species united in purpose. But Elena knew that words alone would not be enough. The Council was coming with everything they had, and the real test of human resolve was yet to come. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered a species that had never learned how to quit. The war began not with a declaration, but with silence. One by one, Human outposts along the frontier went dark, their final transmissions cut off mid-sentence. The Council had learned from their defeat at Proxima and was no longer announcing their presence. Instead, they struck from the shadows, using overwhelming force to crush isolated human positions before disappearing back into hyperspace. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the tactical center of the Valiant, humanity's new flagship, watching the holographic display update with each lost position. Red dots representing destroyed outposts spread like an infection across the star map, showing the systematic advance of the Council's forces. "They're being smart about this," observed General Marcus Webb, his weathered face grim with concern. "They're avoiding our main fleet concentrations and picking off our isolated settlements. Classic strangulation tactics." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They want to force us into a defensive posture, make us spread our forces thin trying to protect everything. Then, they'll concentrate their entire fleet for one massive push at our core systems." The strategy was working. Human forces were being stretched across dozens of systems, trying to protect the refugee populations and industrial facilities that had become the backbone of their resistance. Each attack forced them to commit more ships to defensive duties, weakening their ability to strike back at Council positions. But humanity had learned much from their decades of isolation. The same ingenuity that had driven their technological revolution was now being applied to military strategy. If the Council wanted to play a game of shadows and sudden strikes, humanity would show them how that game was really played. "Initiate Operation Phantom Strike," Sarah commanded. "It's time to remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place." What followed was unlike any warfare the galaxy had ever seen. Human strike teams, using quantum tunneling technology, began appearing deep within Council space. Not fleets or armadas, but small groups of ships that could bypass all conventional defenses and strike at the heart of Council infrastructure. The first target was the massive shipyard at Vega Prime, where the Zachary were building their new dreadnought fleet. The facility was protected by orbital defense platforms, patrol squadrons, and the most sophisticated sensor network in the galaxy. It should have been impossible to approach undetected. The human strike force, led by Captain Maria Santos in her new ship Retribution, materialized inside the shipyard's defensive perimeter like ghosts stepping through walls. The quantum tunneling drives allowed them to bypass every sensor, every weapon, every barrier the Council had erected. "All ships, this is Captain Santos. Remember, we're not here to destroy everything. We're here to send a message. Target the command structures and the new dreadnoughts under construction. Leave the civilian areas alone." The attack was surgical in its precision. Fusion lances sliced through the incomplete hull of the lead dreadnought, turning it into an expanding cloud of superheated metal. The command center exploded in a brilliant flash as Kythera quantum torpedoes punched through its shields. In less than 20 minutes, the galaxy's largest shipyard had been crippled, its entire production capacity reduced to scrap metal. But the most important part of the attack came as the human ships prepared to leave. Captain Santos opened a communication channel that broadcast across the entire Vega system. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Force. Today you have witnessed the price of aggression against free peoples. The Council has chosen to wage war against humanity and our allies, but we will not be the helpless victims you expect. Every attack on our people will be answered tenfold. Every world you threaten will see our ships appear from the darkness. We are no longer running from you. Now, you run from us." The message was simple, but its impact was enormous. Within hours, it had spread across the galactic communication networks, reaching every Council world and military installation. For the first time in their history, the Council faced an enemy that could strike at them anywhere, anytime, without warning. More attacks followed in rapid succession. The Hive Queen's primary breeding facility on Kepler 186 was destroyed, setting back their military expansion by years. The crystalline entities of Rigel 7 watched in stunned silence as their supposedly impregnable data storage facility was infiltrated and its contents downloaded by human intelligence teams. The ethereal city ships of the Whisperer's people found themselves facing human vessels that could phase shift between dimensions, making them untouchable. But the Council's response was swift and brutal. Unable to catch the human strike teams, they turned their fury on civilian targets. The Arcturus colony, home to 2 million human refugees, was bombarded from orbit until nothing remained but glowing craters. The research station at Wolf 359, where human scientists were developing new medical technologies, was hit with biological weapons that killed everyone aboard. The massacre at Arcturus changed everything. When the footage reached human space, showing families being hunted through burning streets by Zachary ground troops, the last restraints on human warfare were removed. The species that had been called too violent for galactic society was about to show the Council what true violence looked like. No more surgical strikes, Admiral Chin announced at an emergency meeting of the Human War Council. No more attempts to minimize civilian casualties. They want to play by those rules? Fine. We'll show them how humans fight when we stop holding back. The response was Operation Cleansing Fire, and it began with the complete annihilation of the Zachary Military Academy on Draco Prime. The human fleet that emerged from quantum tunneling space carried weapons that had never been seen before. Antimatter bombs that could crack a planet's crust, nanite swarms that dissolve matter at the molecular level, and, most terrifying of all, temporal displacement weapons that could erase targets from existence across multiple timelines. The Academy and the military base surrounding it simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a perfectly spherical crater 5 miles deep. The 10,000 Zachary cadets and instructors who had been there moments before were gone, not just dead, but completely removed from reality as if they had never existed at all. The message that followed was delivered by Elena Vasquez herself, now the acknowledged leader of the Human Alliance. Her aged face was calm, but her eyes burned with a fury that made even hardened warriors step back. To the members of the Galactic Council, you have chosen to target our civilians. You have chosen to wage war against women and children who sought only to live in peace. You have made the gravest error in your species' history. We are no longer trying to prove that we are civilized. We are no longer seeking your approval or acceptance. We are reminding you why your ancestors feared the dark between the stars and why you should fear it now. The war escalated rapidly after that. Council fleets found themselves facing opponents who seemed to ignore the laws of physics themselves. Human ships appeared inside their formations, fired impossible weapons, and disappeared before return fire could be brought to bear. Entire battle groups vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the twisted wreckage of space-time where temporal weapons had been used. But the most shocking development came when the Human Alliance struck at the Council's core worlds. The capital system of Proxima Majora, center of galactic government for over 1,000 years, woke up to find human ships in orbit around every inhabited planet. The fleet was massive beyond comprehension. Thousands of ships representing not just humanity, but all the refugee species that the Council had tried to exterminate. Kythera dreadnoughts powered by fusion reactors that burned like captured stars. Ethereal wanderer vessels that existed partially in other dimensions, flickering in and out of reality. Silicon mined ships that were themselves conscious entities, their hulls alive with artificial intelligence. At the center of the formation was the new human flagship, Humanity Ascended, a ship so large it cast shadows on the planets below. Its hull was inscribed with the names of every human world destroyed by the Council, every refugee species they had given sanctuary to, every fallen hero who had died fighting for freedom. The surrender demand was simple: the immediate dissolution of the Galactic Council, the release of all oppressed species, and the establishment of a new galactic government based on voluntary cooperation rather than enforced submission. The Council's response was equally simple. They would rather die than submit to the species they had banished. The Battle of Proxima Majora lasted 3 days and reshaped the political structure of the galaxy. When it ended, the Galactic Council as an institution had ceased to exist. Most of the Council fleet was destroyed, their leadership scattered or captured, their member species left to decide their own fates for the first time in centuries. Standing in the ruins of the Council chambers on the capital world, Elena Vasquez looked out at the burning wreckage of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Around her, representatives of dozens of liberated species waited to hear what would come next. Today, tyranny ends, she said simply. Today, freedom begins. But remember this, we did not fight this war to become the new oppressors. We fought to ensure that no species would ever again face the choice between submission and extinction. The galaxy is free now. What we build next will determine whether freedom survives. The cheers that followed could be heard across the planet, carried by representatives of species that had thought they would never live to see this day. Humanity had taken the stars, but, more importantly, they had given them to everyone. 50 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been a rigid hierarchy enforced by fear and oppression, now there existed the Stellar Commonwealth, a voluntary association of free species bound together by mutual respect and shared purpose. Elena Vasquez had passed away peacefully at the age of 112, but her vision lived on in the great station that bore her name. Vasquez Station orbited the former Council capital world, now called Liberation, serving as the meeting place for representatives of over 200 species. Unlike the cold, intimidating chambers of the old Council, the Commonwealth's halls were warm and welcoming, designed to encourage cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Sarah Chun, now in her 70s, but still commanding the Commonwealth Defense Force, stood in the memorial garden at the heart of the station. The garden commemorated all the species that had been lost to Council oppression, with living monuments to the 12 confirmed extinctions and countless other atrocities. At the center stood a simple stone bearing the names of the crew members who had died during the Kepler stand, including her old friend Alex Turner, whose sacrifice had sparked the resistance movement. Admiral, the new arrivals from the Perseus Arm have requested a meeting, reported Captain Jennifer Park, the daughter of David Park and now Sarah's chief of staff. They're the Silicon Collective, another artificial intelligence species that survived the Council purges. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. Even now, 5 decades later, refugee species were still being discovered in the remote corners of the galaxy. Some had hidden in dark nebulae. Others had fled to regions considered too dangerous for exploration. The Commonwealth's policy was simple. Any species that sought freedom was welcome, regardless of their origins or nature. Schedule them for tomorrow morning. And, Jennifer, make sure they understand that they'll have full voting rights from the moment they sign the Commonwealth Charter. No probationary periods, no second-class citizenship. This was perhaps the most radical aspect of the Commonwealth system. Unlike the old Council, which had maintained strict hierarchies based on age, technology, or military power, the Commonwealth treated all member species as equals. A species that had just achieved interstellar flight had the same voice as humanity or the ancient ethereal wanderers. The system had its critics, of course. Some argued that it was inefficient, that important decisions took too long when every species had to be consulted. Others worried that younger civilizations might make irresponsible choices that affected everyone. But the results spoke for themselves. In 50 years of Commonwealth rule, there had been no wars between member species, no genocides, no systematic oppression of minority groups. Admiral, we're also receiving reports from the deep survey teams, Captain Park continued. They've made contact with something unusual in the Andromeda Galaxy. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The deep survey was humanity's most ambitious project, using advanced quantum tunneling technology to explore galaxies beyond the Milky Way. It was dangerous work, pushing the boundaries of known science, but the discoveries had been extraordinary. They had found evidence of ancient civilizations, new forms of life, and, most importantly, other species that had fought their own battles against oppressive galactic governments. What kind of contact? It appears to be another galactic civilization, similar to what the Council used to be. But, Admiral, they're asking for our help. They say they've heard about what happened here, and they want to start their own liberation movement. Sarah felt a chill of excitement, mixed with concern. The fall of the Galactic Council had sent ripples throughout the local galaxy cluster, inspiring rebellion movements on hundreds of worlds. But this was the first time they had been contacted by an entirely different galaxy. Set up a secure communication link. I want to hear what they have to say. The holographic projector in Sarah's office activated, revealing the image of a being unlike anything in their databases. It appeared to be crystalline in nature, its body composed of geometric patterns that shifted and changed as it spoke. When it communicated, the translation matrix struggled to convey concepts that had no equivalent in any known language. Greetings, liberators of the Milky Way. I am Primary Resonance Kethvar of the Resistance Coalition in what you call the Andromeda Galaxy. We have intercepted your historical transmissions and learned of your victory against the oppressive Council system. We face a similar enemy here, the hegemony of ordered worlds, which has ruled our galaxy for 2 million years. Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. Tell me about your situation. The crystalline being's form shifted, displaying holographic images of vast fleets and planet-sized battle stations. The hegemony controls 70% of our galaxy through a combination of technology suppression and strategic genocide. They have eliminated over 600 species in the past million years, always claiming it was for the greater good of galactic stability. Those of us who remain are scattered, hiding in the void between star systems. The parallels to their own history were unmistakable. Sarah could see the same pattern of control through fear, the same justifications for atrocity, the same systematic elimination of anyone who might threaten the established order. What kind of help are you looking for? We need technology, weapons, and, most importantly, hope. Our people have fought the hegemony for thousands of years, but we have never been able to break their control. Your quantum tunneling technology could change everything. More than that, we need proof that such a system can be defeated. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. The Commonwealth had always maintained a policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of other galaxies, partly because they lacked the resources for such vast undertakings. But this was different. This was not about conquest or expansion. It was about freedom. Primary Resonance Kethvar, I cannot make this decision alone. This will require a vote by the full Commonwealth Assembly. But I can tell you that humanity has never abandoned people fighting for their freedom. Give us time to consider your request. The next few weeks saw heated debates throughout Commonwealth space. The assembly chambers on Vasquez Station hosted representatives from hundreds of species, each bringing their own perspective to the discussion. Some argued that they had a moral obligation to help, that their own freedom would be meaningless if they ignored the suffering of others. Others worried about overextending their resources, pointing out that they were still rebuilding from their own war. The Kithura delegation, led by Engineer Prime Zeta-7, presented detailed analysis of the technological challenges involved. The distance to Andromeda would strain even our most advanced quantum tunneling drives. We would need to establish staging bases in the void between galaxies, and the energy requirements would be enormous. The silicon mines offered a different perspective. The data suggests that the hegemony's control methods are nearly identical to those used by the former Galactic Council. This is not coincidence. Such systems of oppression follow predictable patterns. If we can break one, we can break others. But it was the testimony of the refugee species that proved most compelling. The representative of the Viridian Collective, now a thriving member of the Commonwealth, spoke with quiet passion about their own rescue from Council oppression. 50 years ago, humanity found us broken and scattered, survivors of genocide with nowhere to go. They could have turned us away, citing limited resources or security concerns. Instead, they welcomed us, gave us new homes, and helped us rebuild. Today, Viridian technology helps power Commonwealth ships throughout the galaxy. We owe our very existence to the principle that freedom is not a limited resource that must be hoarded, but a flame that grows brighter when shared. The vote, when it came, was not even close. Of the 237 species represented in the Assembly, 212 voted in favor of providing aid to the Andromeda Resistance Coalition. The dissenting votes came mainly from species that had only recently joined the Commonwealth and were still rebuilding from their own experiences with Council oppression. The expedition that departed for Andromeda 6 months later was the largest undertaking in human history. Over 1,000 ships representing dozens of Commonwealth species, carrying not just weapons and technology, but entire industrial facilities capable of establishing self-sufficient bases in intergalactic space. At the head of the fleet was the newly constructed vessel Infinite Horizon, a ship that embodied everything humanity had learned about both war and peace. Its hull was inscribed with the Commonwealth Charter in over 300 languages, a reminder of the principles they fought to defend. Its weapons systems could crack moons, but its medical bays and research laboratories were designed to heal and create rather than destroy. Sarah Chun, now bearing the title of Commonwealth Expeditionary Commander, stood on the bridge as the fleet prepared for the longest quantum tunneling jump in history. Around her, the crew represented nearly every species in the Commonwealth, working together with the seamless cooperation that had become the hallmark of their civilization. "All ships report ready for jump," announced the navigator, a young ethereal wanderer whose people's mastery of dimensional mechanics had made the expedition possible. "Attention, all ships," Sarah broadcast across the fleet. "Today we begin a journey that our ancestors could never have imagined. We go not as conquerors, but as liberators, not to build an empire, but to tear down a tyranny. Remember that we carry with us the hopes of every oppressed species in our galaxy, and we're the children of those who were once called too violent for civilized society. Today, we show the universe what that violence can accomplish when directed toward justice." The jump itself was a moment of perfect silence, as if the universe held its breath. Then, space twisted, reality folded, and the Commonwealth expedition vanished from the Milky Way, carrying with them the torch of freedom across the cosmic void. When they emerged in Andromeda 3 months later, they found a galaxy in chaos. The hegemony, alerted by long-range sensors to the incoming fleet, had begun what they called the final cleansing, a desperate attempt to eliminate all remaining resistance before the newcomers could establish a foothold. But they had underestimated both the Commonwealth fleet and the local resistance. The crystalline beings of the coalition had used the months of waiting to prepare, striking at hegemony communication networks and supply lines. When the Commonwealth ships arrived, they found not scattered refugees, but an organized rebellion ready to fight. The liberation of Andromeda took 12 years and reshaped both galaxies in the process. The technologies shared between the Commonwealth and the coalition led to breakthroughs that neither could have achieved alone. The cultural exchange between species separated by millions of light years created new forms of art, philosophy, and science. But perhaps most importantly, it established a precedent that would echo throughout the universe. Freedom was not limited to a single world, system, or even galaxy. It was a universal principle that transcended the boundaries of space and time. As Sarah Chan stood in the gardens of the new Commonwealth Coalition Joint Station, orbiting the former hegemony capital world, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had begun as a single species banished from galactic society for being too violent, too chaotic, too unwilling to accept their assigned place in the cosmic order. Now they were the center of an alliance that spanned 2 galaxies and included thousands of species, united not by fear or force, but by the simple belief that every sentient being deserved the right to choose their own destiny among stars. The galaxy had once seen humanity as a threat to stability and order. They had been right, but not in the way they had intended. Humanity was indeed a threat to the kind of stability that came from oppression, the kind of order that was built on the graves of the free. They were chaos incarnate, but it was the chaos of liberation, the beautiful disorder of a universe where every species could reach for the stars and know that they would not be struck down for daring to dream. And in the end, that had made all the difference.